ton of MDMA. 2 men with bullet holes, a jail escape with a grappling hook, a jury corruption attempt, a shoe, and a dog. Welcome to our premium documentary about William Todd and the $60 million dog. This is William Todd. Let us introduce you to him for some context. Not a headline name, not someone most people would recognise. And that's part of what makes him difficult to understand, because when people think about violent crime, they tend to imagine something obvious, a presence, a reputation, something that announces itself before anything happens. Todd didn't have any of that. He looks ordinary, the kind of person you could pass in the street and forget seconds later. No clear signal, no immediate warning. And yet, what he did that night in a quiet part of England suggests something very different, because that kind of violence doesn't come from nowhere. It doesn't appear suddenly. It builds through decisions, through patterns, through a willingness to go further than other people would, and that willingness is the defining feature. Not intelligence, not strategy, escalation. Todd isn't a criminal mastermind. He's not coordinating large-scale operations. He's not building networks. To the world, he's just a successful car dealer, but he is decisive, the kind of person who doesn't hesitate when something crosses a line. And in criminal environments, that can be more dangerous than planning, because planning creates distance, but escalation is immediate. There's also a second pattern we have noticed with William, one that appears time and time again in his decisions. He doesn't separate things, not cleanly. Personal decisions bleed into risk. Emotion overrides logic. You see it throughout his life, and we'll see it throughout this documentary. Impulse is his cousin. Attachment is his brother. And that combination is what defines him. Not as the smartest person in the room, but as the one most willing to act. Pangbourne is the kind of place where violence feels like it doesn't belong. Quiet streets, affluent homes, a contained world in Berkshire, England. So when gunfire erupted in February 2001, it didn't register at first. Some thought it was fireworks, others ignored it until the police arrived. By the time the scene was understood, 1 man was dead, and another, Arthur de Sousa, was still alive, but only just. He had been shot multiple times at close range. The man with him, his bodyguard Alex, lay in a pool of his own blood, pronounced dead on the scene.
Ian Crimp, 59, who lives opposite the scene of the shootings, said he heard between 8 and 10 loud bangs, but assumed they were fireworks.
A targeted shooting, executed with precision, and at the centre of it was William Todd, a wealthy car dealer and a supposed close friend of the surviving victim. The trial that followed wasn't built on a single piece of evidence. It was built on accumulation, fragments, details, moments that, on their own, don't say much, but together start to form something difficult to ignore. One of the most striking pieces of evidence was found at the scene itself. A trainer, a size 8 Reebok shoe, positioned between the legs of one of the victims, 27-year-old Alex El-Hachadi. Not nearby, not displaced randomly, placed in a way that suggested proximity. That shoe became a focal point, because when forensic scientists examined it, they found something unexpected. Inside the trainer were multiple DNA profiles. According to forensic scientist Christine Rees, one of those profiles matched William Todd, another matched his 10-year-old daughter, and a third remained unidentified. This wasn't a neutral object. This was a shoe at the centre of a violent scene, and inside it were traces linked directly to Todd's family, not proof on its own, but part of a pattern, because the case didn't rely on one piece of evidence, it relied on many. Another forensic finding linked the scene back to the victims. A spent cartridge recovered outside the house was found to contain DNA matching Arthur de Sousa. Again, not definitive on its own. But reinforcing the reconstruction, this was a close-range attack, not distant, not accidental. A petrol station in Pangbourne, roughly 200 metres from the scene, footage shows a man buying oil just over an hour before the shooting. That man was William Todd. In the footage, he's wearing a bright blue jacket, with the letters USA across the front. Light-coloured trousers, distinctive, recognisable. But when Todd was arrested, his account didn't match. He told police he had been wearing a navy blue and white check shirt, slacks, black shoes, a navy Armani coat, different clothes, different description. And according to police, those clothes were said to be in the back of his Jeep. When questioned further, Todd refused to answer. No explanation, no clarification, including his whereabouts on the night, his knowledge of the victims, his alleged involvement. Silence. And then there was the witness, Nicola Dixon, Todd's former partner. Initially, she had given statements placing him at the scene, but in court, she changed her position, claiming she had been pressured, that police had threatened to take her daughters, that her eldest child had been held, a serious allegation that was denied by the police force. Detective Constable Vince Newton told the court that the child had been taken for interview, because Dixon would not allow police to speak to her. He said by that stage it was clear Dixon was not telling the full truth, and so the jury was left with everything: forensics, witnesses, contradictions, fragments that didn't align cleanly but didn't disappear either. And when those fragments were placed together, they formed something stronger, a version of events that the jury accepted. William Todd was found guilty, murder and attempted murder, described in court as an execution-style attack. He stood in the dock, impassive, well-dressed as the verdict was delivered. 2 life sentences. This is HMP Winchester, a Victorian prison opened in 1849. It holds around 700 inmates. Category B, local, a place designed for containment, high walls, layered security, routine, everything structured, everything controlled. Because prisons like this don't rely on chance, they rely on systems, but systems are only as strong as the people inside them. Allegedly, unbeknownst to the prison officers hidden inside of the stereo system in his cell, he had 2 mobile phones, a balaclava and 2 hacksaws. This wasn't spontaneous, this was planned. He cut through the bars. He left a pillow stuffed under the blanket on his bed, and another blanket draped across the window of his cell to hide the fact that he had cut through the bars of the ground floor window. Detectives were shocked that Todd managed to get access to the items in the escape kit.
I mean, he had 2 phones and hacksaws in his cell, for God's sakes. How has this been allowed to happen?
Then he cut through the fencing, step by step. He then used a grappling hook and a rope ladder to scale the wall of the prison, precise and timed to perfection. He climbed, escaped. It's been reported the process would have taken around 90 minutes, inside of a prison, even a low-security one, cutting metal, moving across open ground, scaling a perimeter wall, and no one stopped him. How was this allowed to happen?
90 minutes, and he walked out in the open across the prison yard with nobody seeing him. I don't buy it. I want a whole staff meeting in the morning.
Prison officer was suspended and investigations followed, but no further action against staff was taken. Officially on paper, nobody did anything wrong, no conspiracy. But the timeline remains 90 minutes, multiple items of contraband in his cell. How did he get them? How did they get inside of the prison? How were they not found for so long and no interruption? Speculations about how he pulled it off still remain to this day, but the fact was the man is now out and free. For 5 days he disappeared. But this is William Todd, and this may be his only time seeing outside of prison walls for the rest of his life. So he made a decision. He went to see his girlfriend. Really a rookie move for someone so calculated by nature. It is a common theme with William. Impulsivity is his downfall. Multiple police units lay waiting for him to show up, and when he did, that was it. He was arrested. Escape over. The pattern established. Bold action, and in the end, pointless. 18 years later, the crime world is a different world. Encrypted phones, EncroChat. A system criminals believed was truly untouchable. It was marketed as military-grade technology. One criminal tells another it is the same kind the CIA uses. But of course it wasn't. European law enforcement was already inside. They had gathered over 100 million messages from over 60,000 users, watching, reading, recording. Meet Danny Brown, older, watchful, The kind of man who looks less like a street-level grafter and more like someone who's learned to stay calm while other people do the moving. Beside him is Stefan Baldauf, his accomplice, another older face in the frame. They are currently planning a big cargo shipment. They don't look like chaos. They look ordinary, composed, almost forgettable, which is often what makes men like this so dangerous. No balaclavas, no cinematic swagger, just two aging conspirators leaning over a plan they believed was clever enough. The excavator was ready, sealed, altered, loaded with its hidden cargo. But this operation hadn't started at the port. It began with the purchase. They paid $80,000 for the machine, a large excavator that, on the surface, was just another piece of construction equipment. Leon Riley, who owned a construction equipment company in Ireland, provided the cover. A legitimate business, a legitimate reason for movement. Through that front, the excavator was transported from Leeds in the north of England down to an industrial unit in Essex, a location arranged by another associate, Tony Borg. From the outside, it followed a normal path, but inside that Essex unit, the real work had already been done. Peter Murray had sourced the drugs. Philip Lawson designed the concealment. Not improvised, this was engineered. Using a high-end welder, Lawson cut into the boom arm of the excavator. A space was created, large enough to carry hundreds of kilograms. The interior was lined with lead, not to make it invisible, but to make detection harder. The MDMA was placed inside, packed, layered, secured. Then everything was sealed back up, re-welded, repainted. And to remove any visible trace of tampering, a sign company was paid to produce large industrial stickers that the gang placed carefully over the weld lines. To anyone inspecting it, it looked untouched. Factory condition. By December 2020, it was ready to move. Riley's company handled the next step, paying a haulage firm to transport the excavator to Southampton docks. And from there, the journey began. Everything had been carefully planned. But would it be enough? On the other side of the world, something was already happening, something they didn't know about. When the excavator arrived in Brisbane, it didn't just pass through. Australian Border Force officers examined it, X-rayed it, and even through the lead lining they saw something that didn't belong. Inside the arm of the machine there was an anomaly. They opened it. Carefully, methodically. Hundreds of packages of MDMA, all 448 kilograms of it, nearly half a ton, the entire shipment. At that moment, the operation could have ended there, seized, shut down, over. But instead, they made a different decision. They removed the drugs, every package, and in their place, they inserted something else, an electronic tracker. Then the excavator was sealed back up, rewelded, restored, so precisely that no one could tell it had ever been opened. What followed wasn't a seizure. It was a strategy, a controlled delivery. The excavator was sent onward to its original destination, an auction house in Sydney. On paper, everything still made sense. The buyer, a man in the construction industry, nothing unusual, nothing that stood out. When it was collected, he moved it to a secure location while being watched from every angle. Undercover officers, surveillance teams, waiting. The excavator was put to use, a trench was dug, then the machine itself was lowered into it, obscuring sightlines from the outside. For 3 days, 2 men worked on it, inside the arm, searching, following instructions sent from the other side of the world, hand-drawn diagrams, precise guidance, exactly where the drugs were supposed to be. They opened it, looked inside and found nothing, just an empty cavity, a hollow space where nearly half a ton of MDMA should have been. Confusion turned to panic. Messages began to fly across EncroChat, a frantic 6-way conversation, trying to understand what had happened, who had taken it, where had it gone. They believed it had been stolen, but little did they know the truth was far worse. Meet Bob. Bob is a French bulldog living in Bromley, southeast England. He likes walks, attention, sitting beside his owner, small, compact, flat-faced, Danny Brown's dog. And Brown didn't just mention him, he shared him again and again, in between logistics, between conversations about shipments, routes, Hundreds of kilograms of MDMA. There would be Bob, sitting, looking into the camera, wearing a collar. Ordinary, almost forgettable. But that's exactly why it mattered. Because you don't send personal photos unless you feel safe, and Brown felt safe. Safe enough to show pieces of his real life. Safe enough to forget who might be watching. On the surface, it was nothing, just a dog. But investigators saw more, because the real challenge wasn't breaking the encryption and reading the messages. It was identifying the people behind it, turning usernames into real names, and that's where everything began to unravel. On Bob's collar, a small detail, a phone number. It wasn't meant to be seen, but it was there. Investigators caught it, traced it, linked it to Brown's partner, and from there, to him. At the same time, other mistakes surfaced. Baldoff took a photo on his phone where he was clearly visible in a reflection. Shiny surfaces, unintentional glimpses of faces, careless photos, unwitting selfies, each one small, each one insignificant on its own. But together they broke the illusion. The anonymity collapsed. The network was no longer hidden. It was exposed, across countries, across continents, and once identities were known, the rest followed. By 2022, the arrests began. The British side, the Australian side, 10 men in total taken down. In Australia, raids uncovered over $1.2 million in cash. In London, Danny Brown was arrested, still carrying his EncroChat phone. Baldoff's phone was found in his car, and when the investigators searched Danny's home, Bob was there, watching, tail wagging, not realising that he had just played a role in bringing the entire operation down. The courts were clear. This was a colossal operation, industrial scale, international coordination, and yet, undone by human behaviour. 28 and 26 years for ringleaders, Baldoff and Brown, 24 years each for Murray, the supplier, and Reilly, the company owner, 23 years for Lawson, the mechanic, and 15 years for Borg, who helped move the digger. Then, our friend William Todd makes a return. From prison, serving a double life sentence, becomes involved again. But this time it is not violence, it's manipulation. He was trying to undo the convictions, although the motives are still unclear. Was he involved in the original plot, or paid to do this job? The latter seems unlikely, as nothing has ever suggested he is in any need of money. According to the National Crime Agency, he began orchestrating a new plan. The objective was simple: convince the court that the jury had been compromised, paid off, pressured, corrupted. If that could be proven, the verdict wouldn't stand. So they built a story. A woman was recruited, Sherry Avard, her role, to make it believable. She contacted legal representatives claiming she had been in a relationship with one of the jurors, and according to her, he had confessed that he and others on the jury had been threatened, forced to convict, told what the outcome needed to be. It was a serious allegation, the kind that could shake an entire case. But allegations alone weren't enough. They needed identity, proof, something official, so they created it: a false name, a false background, and a fake Romanian identity document, used to support a written statement, a signature, a person who, on paper, existed, but in reality, did not. When pressure mounted for her to appear in person, to testify, to be questioned, the story shifted. They claimed she had left the country, returned to Romania, unavailable, out of reach, conveniently beyond scrutiny. But investigators weren't convinced. The details didn't hold. The identity didn't check out. And the deeper they looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't a witness. It was a fabrication, a constructed lie designed to interfere with the course of justice. In fact, 2 of the names provided had already been taken off the jury. The plan to inject doubt into the system collapsed, and instead of reopening the case, it exposed something else, the lengths he was willing to go, not just to commit crime, but to manipulate the justice system itself, to rewrite reality. And this time, there was no ambiguity. William Todd, the mastermind, already serving 2 life sentences for murder, received an additional 7 years for conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. Danny Thomas was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months for attending court and recording jurors' details as part of the plot. Sherry Avard, the fake witness who posed as a juror's partner, received 12 months in prison for her role in pushing the false allegations. And when you step back, the psychological pattern becomes obvious. Todd escapes prison, gets caught visiting his girlfriend. Brown runs a global drug operation, sends a photo of his dog. Baldoff uses encrypted phones, reveals himself in a reflection, highly organised, technically capable, undone by the simplest things. Please subscribe, it takes our team a long time to produce the quality of videos we do. It's free and goes a long way for us. We will be working round the clock to bring you more videos. Comment on what kind of videos or topics you want to see our breakdowns of.